Okay, I'm back again for another top 10 list, though this list is going to have more than 10. Actually, I've got quite a few honorable mentions, you guys. I do feel like this year gave me more disappointing experiences at the cinema than maybe previous years. I don't know, or maybe I'm just in a mood. But I have several honorable mentions, almost as many mentions as my top 10. So as always, I will try to be brief, but you guys know how it can be with me sometimes. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Mentions part 1. So, Longlegs. I was disappointed with this film because there was so much hype leading up to it. I went into it legit thinking that it was going to be great, and it wasn't. And the worst part about this, unfortunately, was Nicolas Cage. I have reviews for almost all of these, by the way, up on my channel if you want to check out the full-length ramblings and rantings about these films. Alien Romulus. Another film I went into expecting to have a grand time, and while there were parts about it I did like, there was too much that annoyed me for me to leave it off this honorable mention at least. Also, it didn't help that the more people raved about this thing like it was the greatest thing since the first film or better than the first film, the more annoyed I got by that. And the less I started to like it. Like I took out my frustrations on the film by extension. Whatever. Okay, the next one, Babes. Unlikable characters, stupid situations, just I did not care for this film too much. I didn't start to feel a personal attachment with at least the main character until like the last 5 minutes of the film. By then it was too late. I was just ready for it to be done. The Substance. Another movie that I went into, I didn't necessarily go into it with high expectations that I was going to love it because I wasn't super interested to watch it to begin with. Just it's body horror and that doesn't do a lot for me. And while there were parts about it that I enjoyed, there were parts about almost all of these movies that I did enjoy to a certain degree. But what makes these movies edge out is that there's an actual feeling of annoyance at these movies, and that's what I felt about The Substance. The ending was just ridiculously over the top. There were things that the characters were doing that just weren't even realistic. Now, I know obviously the whole premise is not realistic, but you still expect a certain level of realism as far as the way the writing goes. I also felt like this was overrated. I do understand the appreciation that a lot of people had for it. There were things about it that I did appreciate, but the overall feeling about this film is just negativity. That's kind of another thing that separates these films from others. There are some films that I will watch and I was like, it's okay. They don't really generate much emotion in me one way or the other. All of the movies on this list, and I'm feeling like I may have left some off or forgotten some, but all of the movies on this list have elicited mostly negative emotions from me. And so that's another reason why they've ended up on this list. Okay, part 2, dishonorable mentions. Blink Twice. I went in depth as to the things that aggravated me about this movie. The trigger warning at the beginning didn't help, even though I didn't read it. That just annoyed me right off the bat. The main character was not very compelling or interesting, and I didn't feel like she did a great job at carrying the movie. And the way the film wrapped up, just I couldn't buy into that ending at all. Salem's Lot. Boy, what a disappointment. They tried to put so much material into less than 2 hours, and this is a story that needs a lot of time. Salem's Lot is my favorite Stephen King novel, and this one was treated just... I did not appreciate what they did with this. Maybe if you went into it not knowing anything about the original story, you might like it okay, but for those of us who do know the original story, especially if you compare it to the original movie, it just pales. It's was not good. In a Violent Nature. This is a film that was way too long, and there was too much of him just walking in the woods. I felt like this would have worked better as a short film, and by short film, I mean less than an hour long, like maybe 45 minutes, and they could have done, I think, a better job. City Hunter. This is another one of those situations of an anime not being able to translate very well into live action. The girl character annoyed me, and she was coming after him at the end with this big mallet thing, which I completely understand is part of the anime, and in anime it might work, but in in this film it didn't, and the main character was ridiculously goofy. He would go between super serious and then just a total 180 and so goofy and dumb and stupid and juvenile. Fans of the anime might be happy, but this is, on the flip side, this is a situation, someone coming into it, not being familiar with the material, but understanding the way anime is and being super annoyed at the way this translated into live action. So, okay, that's my dishonorable mentions out of the way. Let's go ahead and proceed to number 10, The Watchers. The Watchers made my list of most anticipated for this year, and I was fundamentally disappointed with it. M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, she did an okay-ish job, but honestly, I don't feel like she has what it takes to fully deliver on the promises or the expectation that was set out at the beginning about the story. And then the way things wrapped up at the end, it was so clunky, and I was just rolling my eyes. It was like, no, I can't. So that was pretty disappointing. Okay, number 9. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Ooh, I went in depth as well about the things that aggravated me about this one. It was a huge step down from the one that had come before this, Afterlife, which I actually enjoyed. I thought it was fun. And so I went in expecting the same sort of experience, and it was just mostly annoying. And I didn't like the main character, Phoebe, in here. She got on my last nerves, and the stuff that was going on in the writing just was not, it just didn't hold up. So yeah, that's why it ended up on my list. I was a little agitated when it was done. Okay, number 8. The Beekeeper, another film that got a lot of positive buzz, and I went into it expecting that I would also, I don't know why I do this. I continue to rant about this, but I continue to also do it. So I guess it's my fault. But I did go into it expecting that I would enjoy it more than I did, and it was just the whole premise. I feel like there could have been a decent enough movie in there somewhere, but as things came to a head at the end, it just got more and more ridiculous, and the stuff that he was able to do was just like, no, I can't. And I made a little quick take review of it, kind of going into the various things that aggravated me about it. It was disappointing because I do like Jason Statham, but this one just did not do it for me, unfortunately. Okay, number 7. Madam Web. Yeah, you know this is going to end up on the list because this film was not very good. It wasn't woke or anything like that. It's just the writing wasn't very good, and the way it was pieced together was not well done. I also feel like Dakota Johnson just, I don't know, I feel like maybe she just can't carry a movie as well. You know, maybe she just doesn't have the charisma and magnetism that it takes to be able to hold a film like this on her own, or just, you know, because she's the main character. And I don't think she did a very good job. She was very wooden in her performance. I didn't feel an emotional connection with these people. And the stuff that was happening, especially towards the end, it just got more and more ridiculous. And then I do feel like there was a bit of bait and switch going on, showing the chicks in their outfit, when really that was only a very tiny segment of the movie. That was like seeing the future type of situation. I can't remember. It was like not a flashback, but like a future scene. And I don't even think it lasted 5 minutes. So that was ridiculous. Okay, number 6. Time Cut. I went into this hoping that it would be a more enjoyable experience than Totally Killer. It was not. It was worse. I wasn't super in love with Totally Killer, but at least I enjoyed it a little bit more than this. There was so much wrong with the writing in here, and so just unrealistic things that the characters were able to do and to get away with and whatever. And then just the whole storyline. I did a quick take review of this as well. I grew to not care too much for this character. She had this constant creased forehead, worried, angsty look on her face a lot of the time. And while, yes, I guess you could understand the situation would call for it, it got annoying. I just don't think I care too much for her acting. And it didn't help that the story wasn't very good. All right, number 5. Stop motion. This was a film I saw earlier in the year. Well, obviously all of these films I saw earlier in the year, but way back, like maybe back in February or early March. I remember talking about it with Chris Gore when I was in California. He loved it. I did not. I felt annoyed by the artsy, smartsy sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Pretentious kind of attitude that I felt like this film had. Oh, look at how smart and clever and how artsy we are. And it was annoying. I didn't like much about this at all. So yeah, that one made my top 10 for sure. All right, number 4. The Crow. Oh, why did they even do this? They shouldn't have even done this. It was a complete mistake. There was no need. It might have been a tad better if they hadn't made these characters the same as the characters from the original movie. Like, he was Eric Draven. The chick in here was whatever her name. I can't remember her character's name. I don't even care. It was very bad. Sometimes that's about all I can think. It was bad. And it was disappointing because I like Bill Skarsgård. He made up for it, though, with his performance in Nosferatu. So I was very happy with that one. That one ended up on my other list. All right, number 3. Origin, the story of our discontent. Now, this is technically a 2023 movie, but it was not released here until this year. So I'm putting this one for my 2024 top 10 worst. I had a feeling that things were not going to go well with me and this movie when it started off presenting falsehoods about the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case. A lot of people bought into those falsehoods because they didn't follow the trial, but for those of us who did follow the trial and know the facts of the case more than most people, yeah, this did not sit right. And also, just while the acting was fine and the personal real life drama and the story of this woman and the loss of her mother and then her husband, that was compelling. Just the overall tone of the film, it didn't sit well with me and it was annoying, and I knew pretty early on that this was going to be a film that was probably going to end up in my top 10 worst, and so yes, it did. Okay. Number 2, this one probably elicited more negative feelings than Origins. I don't know, it's pretty close though. I think I rated them both the same, but this one was just very consistently divisive and racist in its tone, and I did not appreciate that at all. And the messaging that they had in here was so heavy-handed and ridiculous. Like, it was an example of messaging done wrong. They were throwing out comments, or this guy here on the right, he was throwing out comments that, number one, weren't even factually correct, and very divisive and incendiary type comments. The thing is, the messaging, this messaging attempt, I get what they were going for, but they went about it all wrong. There is a way to do it to make your point without being idiotic about it, and this movie was idiotic about it. In contrast, the movie American Fiction did it in a way that was just spectacular. I mean, it made all the points it needed to make without being assholey about it. And this movie was assholey about it, and I just couldn't. This was the movie that I saw in California with Chris Gore and Dante from Verbal Riot. Baggage Claim was there also, and who else? Pauly from Latino Slant. So I have fond memories-ish associated with this film, but not because of the film, just because of where I was and the people that I was with at the time I saw it. Okay, number 1, and this should be a surprise to no one who has watched my channel or has heard me talk on live streams, rant about this movie. This movie made me angry. Like, all of these movies agitated me. This number 1 movie pissed me off. I was so angry that I could not form proper words to express how pissed off I was, and it's not going to surprise any of you to find out that it's Joker Folie à Dieu, whatever the hell. I don't care. This movie still angers me. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. I did not like Lady Gaga's performance. Joaquin was fine, but the story itself was terrible. It was obvious that Todd Phillips did not give a crap. In my original review, I said I didn't think he gave a shit. And it was obvious that he didn't. I'm starting to feel like, now some people feel like it was an FU to the fans. I'm starting to feel like this was an FU to the studio, because I'd heard he didn't really want to make this a Joker film originally, but they wouldn't give him the funding unless he attached some sort of IP to it. So it was Joker. The first movie was Joker. And that was fantastic. I'm sorry, I'm talking so fast, I'm slurring my words. That movie was fantastic. I love that film. This movie, it seemed obvious to me he didn't want to make it, and it feels like he went out of his way to make it as craptastically awful as possible, and he succeeded. The downside in giving the middle finger to the studio, if that is indeed what he was really doing, I am starting to feel like that was what he was doing, as opposed to anything personal towards the fans. But the downside of doing this is that it affects the fans, because We want to go in and enjoy something that we're watching, and especially compared to how good that first one was, this one was such a downgrade. Like, that first one is going to be forever tainted now because of how bad this one was. The fact that this exists is always going to be on my mind now if ever I watch the first one again. And while the first one will remain up here for me, this is always going to be this little nasty, like, cloud over my head when I think about the first Joker. I cannot believe this was even made. It was so fundamentally terrible. I just don't even feel like I can come up with enough words even here to describe how bad this movie was. I think plenty of other people have said it so much better than I did. There was no question that this was going to be on my top 10 list. I even mentioned that in my review. I had a feeling from the beginning it was going to be number one because this elicited the most anger from me. As I continued to watch films throughout the year, there were none that made me as thoroughly angry as this movie did. I remember that car ride home, back to my brother's house, because I was in New Jersey and I was fuming the whole way home. And then I was fuming during the review, and I had to get the review done quickly because I had a business meeting. I was in a rush to get it done, and I just couldn't formulate good words. My angsty feeling about this. It was language enough to let you guys know how absolutely shit-tastic this film was. And yeah, that's it for my top 10 worst movies, most disappointing movies of 2024. What were yours? I know that I have taken a diverging path from some of my fellow YouTube movie loving buddies for some of these, but yeah, it is what it is. If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you I don't like it. And these I didn't like. Okay, that's it for this one, you guys. Adios.